Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Um, we, of course, are performing Messages to the Human Heart by Geraldine Herbison, who has joined us this evening. Um, Messages was a 2017 commission by the Organizing Committee for William and Mary's 50th anniversary of the arrival of the first African Americans and the first African American women to be admitted as residential students on the William and Mary campus. I conducted the premiere with the William and Mary Choir at commencement in 2018 in Williamsburg, Virginia. If you'd like to see, there's a brief spotlight video on YouTube via the William and Mary News that highlights a rehearsal that Miss Herbison visited. And we will perform it at our upcoming concert on Saturday, March 9th at 5 p.m. at Church of the Epiphany. Geraldine Saunders Herbison is a composer, violinist, and music educator residing in Hampton, Virginia. She retired from Newport News Public Schools in 1998 after 34 years of teaching, and she taught string classes and directed orchestra music in Maryland, North Carolina, and Virginia. And she's also taught general music, band, and chorus. She studied composition with Undine Smith Moore at Virginia State College, and her works include symphonies, concerti, string and piano music, and vocal works, and have been performed all over the U.S., including at the Kennedy Center. Tonight we'll hear from the composer about her creative process regarding this piece, and then we'll have a few minutes for questions at the end. So please welcome Geraldine Saunders Herbison. Thank you so much for being with us this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It sounds cliche. I hear that on television all the time. Thank you for having me. I feel very honored that you chose to do that piece again, because that was the first time, and I have not heard it since until tonight. What I had prepared to talk about was some of the things that you are already have mentioned, and that was my birth, my music education, my teachers, all the things that went into my choosing to even write music. And the work that I wrote, Messages to the Human Heart, was specifically required of me. I had to do that. I had to write that piece on the spur of the moment. I had never been commissioned to write a choral piece because I have never found that many people that would sing. I mean, I know plenty of singers, but none that I would ask to do the job of actually reading through and singing a piece of music. Choral people are, they come in large numbers. The kind of music I wrote was the music that, a string quartet, all you have to do is get four people together, or a solo, one person and a piano. So I basically worked on music that I know would be played. I knew a few choirs, but I didn't know if I was good enough to ask them to actually perform a work. So I, with this Messages from the Human Heart, I picked, first of all, a subject that I had already studied. I mean, I had read Edwin Markham's poem to Destiny, the part that I call Creed, because that was the name of the piece in his poem. And I started on that piece in many different forms. The first form of it happened to have been a string quartet. I mean, it was a movement taken out of my very first string quartet, but it had no words. I just wrote the music to express the text, but no text was there. So the string quartet version of it was much longer in well, with the human heart one, I had to stretch. It wasn't long enough. The actual music wasn't long enough for the first part. And uh, to have a piece commissioned, it seemed like it should have been more than just the first part or the creed. So, and I had to chop off a lot of the string quartet part because it wasn't going where I wanted to go with the words. So that was the beginning of it. Then I tried um, it with a chorus, but I had chorus and strings and piano. I have a version of that. I don't know if it's a computerized version. So, but at one time I wanted a choir to sing it, but I didn't have the choir. So then when you called, I mean, when I forget his name, it's going to come to me. When he requested that piece, I went back to There Is a Destiny because I couldn't think of anything about women in particular going to a school in 1967. I said, what do you do with that? But I wanted to write the piece. So, but I thought in reverse, I thought of William and Mary deciding to accept the three women uh, in 1967. Whatever was in their mind to me was saying, I care not what their creed may be or what their, we're going to have these three women come to this campus. So I turned the message around. I mean, and so after I did that, then I said, now this piece is still too short. So even though, in an ordinary choral setting, you could sing just the first part and leave the rest off, and it would be okay. A couple of minutes is a good amount of time for a choral piece to be. But for a work, you don't commission or anyway, I'm going to skip that part. So I found in my hymn book, the Presbyterian hymnal, this piece by Francis Whitmarsh. And I don't know how long I had been looking at that piece, but all of a sudden, what she said, and she was a woman. That was the other thing. There are not too many hymnals, not too many hymns anywhere that I've sung in the Presbyterian hymnal anyway, where a woman is doing the poetry or doing the music. I think she did both the poetry but also one of my favorite composers in the hymnal. Oh God, now I can't think of his name, but she didn't write the music to it. It was her words, and not Randall Thompson. Anyway, it'll come to me. Wrote the music. So I said, okay, I like her words, but I don't like them in the order that she put it in, because I I had a tune in my head that I felt those words would really work with if I could change the words around a little bit. But then it seemed like I found online a statement um, about her poem had been written not as it was in the hymnal, but in the way that I wanted it to be for the music. And so um, I used that of the second half, or not the not the commandment, but the proclamation. I thought it was so beautiful what she wrote. And I had the piece. Oh yeah, but in this sheet I've left off a line, but in the music itself I have that line. But that to us under whose hand the years in beauty flow, that got me right there. And so then from radiant mornings to splendors of the night, the march of days as seasons come and go, just and then about the snow. And then there was in ever focused words of light and clearest sound, may we proclaim. All of that was in her words. So there was nothing left but for me to do the commandment and say, love, let love increase. So then I would have a 3 movement work. And that's how it came about. Now, when I wrote it, there was some things that I probably should have given more thought to, like chorus. Choral people need to breathe. and and the fact that the music just flowed, and with string players you just go from one note to the other, you hold out, you never have to worry about taking a breath, you have to articulate some way, but the main thing is uh, the breath part. So the phrasing, I had to really work on that because my voice is so bad that I can't sing anymore. And I should have sung, there should have been places where I sung so I would know the problems that I would have. But I've looked at the piece again since that time, and just sang it out with my bad voice. And I know now where I have to breathe, things like that. And there was another thing. Oh, pitch, pitch. Um, I thought, well, I always think high because when I was in choir in high school, the goal was to be able for first violins to hit high C. But that's changed over the years. And people don't strive to sing high C anymore. And even B is bad. B is bad. So thinking that I should have, I think, uh, organized that piece so that it would have been a little lower. It would have modulated to a different key, keeping the first sopranos from having to go so high. So those are the two things and because of that, I, did tinker around since that piece has been written, to see where else I could have gone with, especially the third movement. I think it is the third movement. And I said, well, any any person who's conducting, if they want to do that, it's out of my hands. Once you've written the music, it's out of your hands. You share it with somebody and it belongs away. So a lot of times composers say, well, I mean, conductors say, well, we can't go that high. So let's see how we can modulate this thing. So it wouldn't have bothered me because the essential music would have been there in another key if it's a good modulation. But I wanted to do something else with it to lower it a little bit. But you also have to be careful about lowering things when you've got bass below, because you might lower the top and have a problem with the bottom. So I know that with writing string music, you can't lower something and go beyond, I mean, below middles, I mean, one line, whatever that C is, um, because that's our C string, and they can't just undo a peg and go lower. So, but in choral music, I said the next time, and I have written some other pieces now, I will watch that top bottom ratio in writing. But still, I loved when I was putting all that together. I felt so much like it was something that I really wanted to say, about where we, just to look at people, how we look at people in general. So that was a message that I wanted to get out. And I think that when William and Mary uh, commissioned that piece, they gave me a reason to do something with that line of thinking, to say, to express something, to share some thought with the world at large. Now, and that's mainly there. I can talk about voice leadings and all that. That's how technically I did it, but I don't know how many of you want to learn how to write uh, a piece at this moment. I had some examples of things like text means a lot to me. What the word says, uh, poetry or reading any kind of text is the first part of music to me. And even if it's an instrumental piece, I still will follow a text that I have heard. It gives me the rhythm. Um, it gives me color. Uh, if you talk about um, um, I'm trying to think of a piece. Well, with music, you can paint a picture, you can set a mood, you can set your rhythm. And you don't have to just go 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. I was thinking of a song of a vagabond uh, that I knew, it started out. There is something in the autumn sets my gypsy blood astir. I must rise and follow her. With well, I had the poem down here somewhere, but all of that, all of that kind of feeling went into writing a music that had nothing to do with chorus, but it was the text that caused the music to become. So text means a lot, and I do read a lot, and I love poetry, but there's also the colors, especially in your second movement of this piece. Um, there is the color of the, just her words, uh, from radiant mornings. You hope you feel a little bit of sunshine going through radiant mornings to splendors of the night. You are looking at color there rather than singing just a tune. The march of days, you are seeing the seasons go, from spring to winter. Uh, it just is in the words that can color, make a painting of what you see. And so I do use music I do try to paint a scene in music as, people are singing. Hope they are in the mood with me because I go somewhere where there's a spiritual realm and I can see and feel all of those places. And that's what makes it so much fun to write. I really don't like editing music, checking for errors like misspellings. That can happen a lot. Forgetting to put a period at the end of a sentence, or putting a dash when words are connected, or forgetting that slur that connects two parts of a word. So that's very tedious, but the actual feeling of not wading through, but just moving through the music is very important, uh, to my spirit, I guess. And that's about all I can say. I did have a whole lot. I mean, I have pieces and examples and all that stuff, but I won't go through all of that if if we can get Mr. Kennedy to or Dr. Kennedy to interrupt me and
Sure.
say I have some questions.
I do have some questions. Thank you
Uh,
so much for that. That's really that explains a lot about the piece, so thank you.
mhm.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about the other choral works you've written since? So you gave this piece to me, I think, in like November 2017. You said you mentioned you have written a couple of other choral works since then. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Well, I've written well, I felt like I've written a piece called Little Brown Baby. That's not religious. That's that's by uh, a black poet. Oh, and you I know his name, but I have all this stuff written down somewhere. Uh, so I've got this one, Little Brown Baby, and I have Spring. That was a very early one that was an assignment from Mrs. Moore, Undie Moore. Had this class in theory where she taught us, I think, taught us how to connect text and then said, you got to write a piece using it. And this that semester, we all had to write a madrigal. So, so I got this madrigal by Thomas Nash, and it's what's called, I'm trying to see if I Spring, the Sweet Spring, and it has birds in it. So I mean, so I have that spring, that's one, and I have Little Brown Baby, and then I have a lot of Christmas bells is another one, and I have several, but I've never heard any of them. I mean, I've heard them on the computer, but I've never heard a choir sing any of my other pieces except Spring. That was for a girls' choir with piano. So it you know, and then I did one called Our Father, which is in flux. The title might change. I have a problem with titles, beginnings and endings. Those things I don't. I'm always trying to figure out, how will I end this piece? What do I want to do? Or a piece will begin, and I say, well, you just can't start this piece. You need an introduction. So uh, I will go back and try to, oh, wait a minute. I'm trying to see what other choral piece I have. Well, there's Christmas bells. There is Make a Joyful Noise. I don't like that title, but I call it A Joyful Noise. It's based on one of the Psalms. And I like that piece, but still, the computer, if I didn't have a computer, I wouldn't hear anything. Well, I hear it because a lot of the pieces I started before I had a computer, and actually writing it on the computer sometimes is very tedious. I know there are people who know how to, for instance, play the piano and get it all written down in music on the computer, but I don't know how to do that. I have to write each note out and then do playback and listen. And so basically, if I want certain chords to be there, I do it on my regular piano. I do it first and then put it on computer. So I think I have about 6 or 7 pieces, but I do have a lot of poetry that I want to do.
Great. We are also doing two arrangements of African American spirituals by Undine Smith Moore, and you studied with her. Can you tell us what it was like to work with her?
It was something else. Well, class was great. It was great. It was scary. Um, I know I have cried many times. Uh, if she would put a red mark through my music uh, when I was in her class, I might just run out of the room crying. But she was not a mean person, and she was always saying, "Rest, take a breath, rest." And but she was very thorough. She would teach a lesson, any lesson, and then you would have to write it. because our class for 2 years, our classes were called Basic Theory and Harmony. You couldn't just, basic theory and composition, theory and composition. Um, so you couldn't just learn the theory of it. You had to use that theory in your writing. And so every end of each semester, we had a requirement. One time it was um, the first one, I think, was something like a minuet, something very easy. And then we went to the larger forms of composition. You had to try to write. Well, we didn't have to try to write a symphony or anything, but we had to do. That's when I got that string quartet version of "There Is a Destiny," and it was a 3 movement work for strings, and Mrs. Moore was very well. I always got A's, even though I cried a lot. Uh, but what she would do was would assign us this thing, and then the next time we met, which was probably the next day because it was a 4-hour course, um, then we had to demonstrate what we had worked on. Sometimes we'd be up all night trying to put something together, trying to understand first. You understood, then you wrote. And then the next day, we would all gather around this piano, this grand piano. There weren't that many people in the class, maybe about 7 or 8 people. And she would go through each work, each one. And any little thing like parallel this, that was the problem with me. Parallel this and octaves. I couldn't get away from that because at first when I first learned to play music before I went to study music in high school, I played by ear. So a lot of the stuff I did, I just heard it. So I didn't try to figure out if I was running a parallel something or other and these chords and all that stuff. She was a very thorough teacher. That's all I can say, and very hyper. She was very kind of hyper, always, but always telling you to rest. Always telling. But she told me, don't worry about getting your pieces published. Don't worry about copyrights. Don't worry about these things, how much money it's going to make, and that kind of stuff. You just you just keep writing and writing and writing. And if it's going to happen one day, you know. So we both, I think I was looking for her works the other day, and I can't find that. I can't find a lot of the works that we sang in our community choir before I even knew Miss Moore. But those works, I don't see them anymore. So maybe she didn't have them copyrighted. And there were a lot of things that we did of hers before I even knew who she was. And then I went to Virginia State, and there she was. So, but she was a great teacher. I had many, many great teachers, though. Because there was Willis Patterson. I don't know if you know him, because he had a men's choir, and he was more geared toward opera. And I looked him up because he had written a couple of books about, art songs. He was my voice teacher, but that's the first time I heard an opera that actually our choir could perform. You know, I mean, it wasn't a choir; it was an opera workshop, and I played the violin. I didn't sing, but Amal and the Night Visitors, and but I saw him on television in a TV opera before I ever knew who he was. So there have been a lot of great teachers that
Great.
I've run across, you know, in my life.
Great. And I think Min has a question.
Hello. I wrote this down.
Hi.
I want to phrase it exactly right. So I have composed a few pieces and have struggled with feeling like I'm battling against centuries of religious choral tradition because
Oh,
at times writing a piece about something secular or small in scale can inadvertently come off kind of funny or cheesy when there's 50 people singing it. I'm not quite sure why, or if this is
uh,
something you ever experienced, but do you approach composing secular works differently from religious works?
uh, I I approach whatever I like. I mean, well, if I I just I love religious music, but I feel like the great ones have been done already. The great religious music is already there. I don't, so anything that I do is less than that. But I like all kinds of music. I do like musicals too. I like I like a little bit of rock, heavy metal. I but I'm not going to write heavy metal because that's not my leaning. That's not my. But do what you like to do, and if you really enjoy working with it, then somebody else is going to enjoy it too. And so I don't know. Don't do it necessarily for chorus. You might try doing it for voice first, just voice alone, and getting it in. I have a lot of vocal pieces, and I I wish I had taken some of those. I might and made them into choral pieces. Do you just want to write choral music?
I kind of write it all, but I'm interested in learning more about writing for choral.
Uh-huh. Choral is hard. It's I don't know what it is about it, but you don't get the thrill of having an instrument around you all the time. And the music that you write on computer, unless you found a way, you have to do that without knowing what the voices are singing. The text, they don't give you text. I don't know when Finale is going to come up with text that can be heard with the music. Uh, there are some other ways too, but they're very tedious to write and hear exactly what the people are saying. But you can have your little sample group, your little sample quartet, if you want to write for more voices, then add on to your chamber group. That's what it is, choral chamber group.
Thank you.
Mhm. I hope that helped you. I say just go with what you like and it will turn out right for you because there is probably not that many mistakes. I mean, it's just like art, a stroke here, a stroke there, and it's still right.
May I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
Hi, my name's Annika.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, you were a teacher for quite a long time as well, and I'm wondering how that informed, if there's any ways that that informed how you write and how you think about music.
True. Well, I taught, and that's what I did with my classes. Well, I taught chorus and orchestra, but mainly orchestra. And I taught them as they were reading how to write. They had to write too. They could write their own tunes. I had a little Mac Plus computer in my middle school, and they could write their own music and their own little duets. And that just happened to be a part of how I thought they could learn the music well. And so I also did a lot of arranging for string for the people who were in my class. I know there is one piece I sent off to be published that my 8th grade class played it first. And so it was like teaching was like a workshop in itself. I was learning from the students, they were learning from me. And I had just a ball with that too. So that's a part of my life before I actually got into really serious composition. So if they walk in and say, Miss Herbison, we want to do the reflex. And I said, what? The reflex? What is that? And I would find out, listen to the recording on the radio over and over again, driving home somewhere, and arrange it for them because there was no music out there for them for orchestra. And it would be in a way easy enough for them to play it. And I did a lot of that. So the most of my teaching years were arranging for the students. Stuff like Stand By Me or Lean On Me or Ina Kleiner Rock You Willie music. Stuff that they could identify with and that they had heard and wanted to be able to play. So, yeah, it's a good thing to be teaching.
That's great. Thank you. I know I'm not a teacher, but I know we have many members who are teachers and several music teachers in our group. So I think that will be very interesting for them.
I couldn't do that as much with chorus because my choral groups, they didn't treat them right, actually. The school, I mean, by the time I got a choral group, they were in the 8th grade and middle school ended. I mean, they had to go to high school. So you had this short amount of time to teach them how to read, to teach them all the stuff that you expect of a chorus, and then prepare for a concert, maybe twice a year. So it was kind of frustrating, but still, there was one thing else about choral music. You have to be able to, if you're a cappella, you have to be able to get through an entire piece and stay within the key. I remember that. Oh, I remember that in high school where my teacher could not play a piano. So he would come in the room and he would strike the chord, or, we'd go through a few vocal exercises. But when we got ready to read, he'd strike a chord on the piano. And that meant we were to start this piece. I mean, you know, the Hallelujah by Randall Thompson. I don't know if you ever loved that piece, but from beginning to end, we had to be in the same key. We had to travel through that piece and end up in tune. And I just really love that. That was like an adventure in itself. And so he used to he used to stand me right in front of him. That's when I could sing soprano. And I don't know if it was because I played the violin or what it was, but my I seemed to have perfect pitch. I knew it's very frustrating. It's hard on your voice when something starts going south, or you can almost hear it. One voice going flat in a not much, just a milliliter flat can throw the whole thing into a whole other key. That was the adventure of singing. It was, and the best in a cappella. We did the Messiah in a cappella. Our choir in high school, and I was in another world. That was another one, All Breathing Life. Does anyone know that piece by Bach? All Breathing Life. That piece, anyway, we did that, and that was a cappella, and you had to roll from the beginning, get that chord, start at the beginning, and go to the end, and then you would strike the key again. And if we were there, we were actually very happy about it. We were cheering ourselves. But anyway.
As do we. We're very happy when we make it back on
Right.
screen. Yeah. Very satisfying. Yeah. Great.
But that's something that a choral director has to go through. There's something very scary about it to me, that you have to do that. There's no way that, unless you sing with your group. Now, if you sing with your group, you can keep them there. But I don't remember Mr. Savage ever singing with us either.
Yeah.
And he certainly didn't play the piano. If we played at all, he had an accompanist. We had an accompanist to do all of that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think we're at our end, but we really appreciate your time. Hi, everyone. I'm Miles Kennedy, Artistic Director of Thomas Circle Singers. I hope you enjoyed our session with Jeraldine Saunders Herbison, composer of Messages to the Human Heart. You can hear this work at our upcoming concert on Saturday, March 9th at 5 p.m. at Church of the Epiphany and via live stream. The concert will also feature Evelyn Simpson Curenton's stirring Build Ye the Walls, last season's inaugural commission from the James Krieger Fund for New Music, as well as Sean Kirchner's uplifting arrangement of Unclouded Day. You won't want to miss it. Tickets and more information can be found at thomascirclesingers.org. I hope to see you there.